per square inch on a 100-ton tank. How do they do that? They have a track that's broad and it distributes the force, right? If that thing had wheels, it'd be sinking into that grass. So it's a broad distribution. So we want to design our occlusions like this tank with like a broad sharing of the load. It just makes sense intuitively. You don't have to be an engineer to know it. We can't control the neuromuscular envelope. That's just like a program in an engram. But we can only control the dim lobes. So if an envelope is a problem, our choice is to open the vertical, like that constricted. Our choice is open vertical or increase overjet. And we got to get the teeth out of the way. It's the only way to do it. Set the patient upright, and with articulating paper, put it in there, and I'll say 66. So if I lay that in there with some, like the AccuFilm, and I say 66, and when they say 66 and that mandible comes forward, if I'm getting like those teeth hitting, that needs to come off. 66, they're hitting that paper, that's a bad situation. Just take a fine diamond and adjust either the lower incisors of or the maxillary or the upper. Okay? Basically, a destructive bite is just indicating the muscles at pterygoid. See how it's activated? Because it's got a destructive occlusal scheme. When the muscles are balanced and things have a home and they fit, that lateral pterygoid shuts down. This is an example of chronic lateral pterygoid pull. When that lateral pterygoid is chronically pulling on that disc, that's what's causing disc displacement, anterior displacement, and eventually as that thing gets pulled and the ligaments stretch, that thing starts to get thin and eventually can perforate. It's the etiology of TMJ issues. Okay? See that right there? Ironically, this is a hybrid patient that I treated with all ceramic, and this was on the delivery adjustment, and I took this picture and I wanted to capture that. But I did a good job of taking the picture. I took that picture too, and I did a good job of documenting where these teeth were hitting. But what I didn't do a good job is adjusting it. Because she did it for me. See that? Chipped off the edge. I take it back. See that? Same
So
thing.
how did you know those marks were all pretty even? What's wrong with that?
That?
You don't
See
want
that
to
right there?
Yeah, just that.
See that?
Yes.
All
Okay.
that force is right there.
I gotcha.
I mean, you still want them, when they go into protrusive, to have anterior guidance and disclude their posteriors, right?
Yeah.
When they go protrusive, do you still want them touching on those teeth?
Yeah, but what I'm saying is I want to have,
Evenly.
I don't want to
Just
have,
even.
I don't want to have
It's
point
almost just a
contact.
point
That's a
contact.
high heel shoe on
I
my
get
back.
it. I see it. Okay.
I just want it broad.
Yeah.
And what's crazy is when you start doing this in your practice and you have the patients do that and they get that nice broad place to rest, it's almost like they go, oh yeah, that feels good. You know, someone that has that tendency to have occlusal dysfunction issues, you give them that nice flat place to rest and it almost like it shuts the muscles off. And you can do this in yourself if you just take something that's like a little pin or a little dot here and put it on there, you can almost feel the muscles just kind of quivering.
Mom,
So-
I did my mom's whole mouth, right?
Yeah.
She came down for sedation, we did her whole mouth. She came down one day for delivery, but then she went home and she couldn't, her bite, she like, I don't know, she was complaining kind of headaches and the bite felt kind of weird. But once we got her back, I had to free up her anteriors, like you said,
Mhm.
give her a little bit of room up there, right? And she
Yeah.
felt so much better, just from
It's
little
amazing how
lightning,
little things
just
can do.
like no contact up there,
Yeah.
just giving them a little free space up there.
A single tooth failure like the one I just showed you is most likely an occlusal contact problem, okay? If you're just getting a chip on that one tooth, in veneer cases, the most common place for this to happen is the distal of the lateral incisors. It's because that cuspid goes through and just boom. So I'm checking those a lot, but if I've got a single tooth failure, it's most likely a contact problem. By contrast, if I've got multiple teeth fracturing or failing, that's probably a constriction problem or a pathway problem, right? The teeth are in the way of the mandible. The Teeth are in the way of the neuromuscular envelope. So this is how I kind of like to get a occlusal scheme set up. Most of the contact here, very light here. I would go in and I would adjust this, and I would either get just a broad even like this all the way across, or I'd eliminate it altogether. Okay? Remember that coming home, sitting up 66? If I started seeing these like streaks when they're saying 66 right here, then I would be eliminating those. Tooth position and phonetics. The F and V sounds we use to evaluate the maxillary incisal edge position. So I'll say Victor, say Frank, 55. I'm looking for that incisal edge to be at that wet dry border. S sounds evaluates the relationships of the maxillary anterior teeth to mandibular incisors. Okay? S sounds, I'm saying the maxillary anterior teeth to the mandibular incisors. So if I had a lot of whistling sounds on my S sounds, I would probably need to hollow out that lingual concavity a little bit up in here where that airflow is coming through. Right? TH sounds.
Can you say that again? If you got whistling, you would hollow out?
I've had this on a couple of dentures once, and I never understood why.
It's usually because what's happened is that airflow of the S sounds, it's distributed by the tongue and on that maxillary cingulum. So my experience is when I've had those things, it's usually because there's some kind of constriction in the way that airflow is going over there. So I may go in there.
So there's more room there.
A little bit more of like a lingual space.
Okay.
That's been my experience. TH sounds evaluate the lingual cingulum contour to the tongue. So the is the lingual, is the cingulum contour to the tongue. TH, the. Right? So we don't seem to think about these a lot when we're dealing with, natural teeth, and you and I do a crown, or just putting a crown. But when you've taken everything away and you're reestablishing stuff, some of these issues come up. And so when they do, it's knowing what things do I need to be aware of and how do I modify it.
No.
Most of the time in the first 6 week, people will adapt to them. Well, so we have that on our site, but if it's an ongoing problem, we might need to make changes with these things. I don't know what those are. It looks like dentures with food in them. But yeah, that's. So we've gone through 507 slides today. Your brain feel tired?
Yeah.
My back's tired. So I want to, we can just call it, or if you want to watch that video, I can see if I can dig it out on the hybrid surgery. I think it's maybe 5 minutes long. And we don't need to go in a great depth of detail, but you might find it interesting if you just kind of want to watch the sequence of how it works. Or we can open it up and we can do question and answer, or we can do some treatment plans. I know Jared had sent me some cases that people had questions, or you can go take off and go out to dinner with your family. I've got most of the content that I wanted to share with you done. There is one video I do want to share with you. It's not dental related, but I think it's kind of a cool message. If I can find it here. Yeah, here it is.
Young fish swimming along, and they happen to meet an older fish swimming the other way, who nods at them and says, "Morning, boys, how's the water?" And the two young fish swim on for a bit, and then eventually one of them looks over at the other and goes, "What the hell is water?" The point of the fish story is merely that the most obvious, important realities are often the ones that are hardest to see and talk about. Stated as an English sentence, of course, this is just a banal platitude. But the fact is that in the day-to-day trenches of adult existence, banal platitudes can have a life or death importance. The plain fact is that you graduating seniors do not yet have any clue what day in, day out really means. There happen to be whole, large parts of adult American life that nobody talks about in commencement speeches. One such part involves boredom, routine, and petty frustration. The parents and older folks here will know all too well what I'm talking about. By way of example, let's say it's an average adult day. You get up in the morning, go to your challenging white-collar college graduate job, and you work hard for 8 or 10 hours, and at the end of the day you're tired and somewhat stressed, and all you want is to go home and have a good supper and maybe unwind for an hour and then hit the sack early, because of course you have to get up the next day and do it all again. And you remember there's no food at home. You haven't had time to shop this week because of your challenging job. And so now after work you have to get in your car and drive to the supermarket. It's the end of a work day, and traffic is apt to be very bad. So getting to the store takes way longer than it should. And when you finally get there, the supermarket is very crowded, because of course it's the time of day when all the other people with jobs also try to squeeze in some grocery shopping. But you can't just get in and quickly out. You have to wander all over the huge, overlit store's confusing aisles to find the stuff you want. And you have to maneuver your junky cart through all these other tired, hurried people with carts, etc., cutting stuff out because it's a long ceremony. And eventually, you get all your supper supplies, except now it turns out there aren't enough checkout lanes open, even though it's the end of the day rush. So the checkout line is incredibly long, which is stupid and infuriating, but you can't take your frustration out on the frantic lady working the register, who is overworked at a job whose daily tedium and meaninglessness surpasses the imagination of any of us here at a prestigious college. But anyway, you finally get to the checkout line's front, you pay for your food, and get told to have a nice day in a voice that is the absolute voice of death. And then you have to take your creepy, flimsy plastic bags of groceries in your cart with the one crazy wheel that pulls Magdalene to the left, all the way out through the crowded, bumpy, littery parking lot, and then you have to drive all the way home through slow, heavy, SUV-intensive rush hour traffic, etc., etc. Everyone here has done this, of course, but it hasn't yet been part of you graduates' actual life routine, day after week, after month, after year. But it will be. And many more dreary, annoying, seemingly meaningless routines besides. But that is not the point. The point is that petty, frustrating crap like this is exactly where the work of choosing is going to come in. Because the traffic jams and crowded aisles and long checkout lines give me time to think. And if I don't make a conscious decision about how to think and what to pay attention to, I'm going to be pissed and miserable every time I have to shop. Because my natural default setting is the certainty that situations like this are really all about me. About my hungriness and my fatigue and my desire to just get home. And it's going to seem for all the world like everybody else is just in my way. And who are all these people in my way? And look at how repulsive most of them are, and how stupid and cow-like and dead-eyed and non-human they seem in the checkout line. Or at how annoying and rude it is that people are talking loudly on cell phones in the middle of the line. And look at how deeply, personally unfair this is. If I choose to think this way in the store and on the freeway, fine. Lots of us do. Except thinking this way tends to be so easy and automatic that it doesn't have to be a choice. It is my natural default setting. It's the automatic way that I experience the boring, frustrating, crowded parts of adult life when I'm operating on the automatic, unconscious belief that I am the center of the world and that my immediate needs and feelings are what should determine the world's priorities. The thing is that, of course, there are totally different ways to think about these kinds of situations. In this traffic, all these vehicles stuck and idling in my way, it's not impossible that some of these people in SUVs have been in horrible auto accidents in the past, and now find driving so terrifying that their therapist has all but ordered them to get a huge, heavy SUV so they can feel safe enough to drive. Or I can choose to force myself to consider the likelihood that everyone else in the supermarket's checkout line is just as bored and frustrated as I am, and that some of these people probably have much harder, more tedious, or painful lives than I do. Again, please don't think I'm giving you moral advice, or that I'm saying you're supposed to think this way, or that anyone expects you to just automatically do it, because it's hard. It takes will and effort. And if you are like me, some days you won't be able to do it, or you just flat out won't want to. But most days, if you're aware enough to give yourself a choice, you can choose to look differently at this fat, dead-eyed, over-made-up lady who just screamed at her kid in the checkout line. Maybe she's not usually like this. Maybe she's been up 3 straight nights holding the hand of her husband who's dying of bone cancer. Or maybe this very lady is the low-wage clerk at the motor vehicles department who just yesterday helped her spouse resolve a horrific, infuriating red tape problem through some small act of bureaucratic kindness. course, none of this is likely, but it's also not impossible. It just depends what you want to consider. If you're automatically sure that you know what reality is and who and what is really important, if you want to operate in your default setting, then you, like me, probably won't consider possibilities that aren't annoying and miserable. But if you really learn how to think, how to pay attention, then you will know you have other options. It will actually be within your power to experience a crowded, hot, slow, consumer hell type situation as not only meaningful, but sacred, on fire with the same force that lit the stars. Love, fellowship, the mystical oneness of all things. Not that that mystical stuff's necessarily true. The only thing that's capital T true is that you get to decide how you're going to try to see it. This, I submit, is the freedom of real education, of learning how to be well-adjusted. You get to consciously decide what has meaning and what doesn't. That is real freedom. That is being educated and understanding how to think. The alternative is unconsciousness, the default setting, the rat race, the constant gnawing sense of having had and lost some infinite thing. I know that this stuff probably doesn't sound fun and breezy or grandly inspirational the way a commencement speech is supposed to sound. What it is, as far as I can see, is the capital T truth with a whole lot of rhetorical niceties stripped away. You are, of course, free to think of it whatever you wish. But please don't just dismiss it as some finger-wagging Dr. Laura's sermon. None of this stuff is really about morality or religion or dogma or big fancy questions of life after death. The capital T truth is about life before death. It is about the real value of a real education, which has almost nothing to do with knowledge and everything to do with simple awareness. Awareness of what is so real and essential, so hidden in plain sight all around us all the time, that we have to keep reminding ourselves over and over, this is water. This is water.
So I like that message because I think it's relatable to us as dentists. I mean, I know for myself, there's days where I'm just like, how much longer am I going to do this stuff? Anyone ever had a day like that?
Yeah, it's only been 6 weeks.
And so we all have those moments, and sometimes I can get frustrated with my staff, or even sometimes the patients are annoying.
We like you guys, Brady. It makes us senior guys. We like that. We laugh at your, it's called Schadenfreude. In German, it's the perfect.
Rites of
name.
passage, I
It's
guess.
her
I don't know.
happy.
Yeah.
The direct translation is you're happy at someone else's expense, right?